After a record-breaking weekend of snowfall across Colorado and New Mexico, the weather calms down across the United States, but changes could be in store. We detail it all next at the Weather Farm. Hello, I'm meteorologist Christopher Hale. Welcome to the Weather Farm. This is your weather forecast for Monday, November 11th. Just to recap, we saw that weather system that was in Colorado and New Mexico. It brought 30, 40, 50, up to 70 inches of snow across that region. Parts of Texas saw almost a foot of rain out ahead of it in the warmer section. That has moved off into the southern parts of Ontario. It's no longer affecting the United States and won't play a role in our weather for the rest of this week. We do see across the west on our Monday that another area of low pressure is moving onshore, bringing rain to the lower elevations and snow to those higher elevations. And that rain that was across the Ohio Valley, it has pushed off the east coast. It's moving out into the Atlantic and is no longer posing a threat to the United States. We still have the remnants of what was Tropical Depression Raphael. It's now 1,009 millibar low, just kind of spinning. Its area of circulation is real off to the south and west, while it does spread some moisture up into the Gulf Coast region. So the thing that we want to talk about is, yes, the remnants here of Raphael. It's going to continue to meander. It's currently moving eastward, but it's going to loop around and kind of just dissipate in the Gulf. We do have an area of concern that we are watching, again, just south and east of the Yucatan Peninsula. That area will continue to be monitored over the next 7 days, and in our videos later this week, we will talk about what might happen. So I want to jump right in here to our 500 millibar chart. This is where we kind of see where the areas of high pressure, the ridging, and the areas of low pressure with the troughs are going to be. And so this is Monday night into Tuesday. So we see that system moving onto the west coast. Out ahead of it, we have ridging across the central plains, and we have a little area trough across the northeast. As we continue to move into our week, that ridge starts to move slightly east as that trough digs a little bit further down, going again to those four corner regions. As we move into our Wednesday morning, that's going to eject out into the plains. Behind it, another area of low pressure is going to move onshore to the Pacific Northwest. But on our Wednesday into our Thursday, we're going to set up an area here across the central plains into the Ohio Valley where we could see the chance of severe weather and some heavy rainfall. So that's going to be an area we're going to watch as that cooler air clashes with the warmer air. But as we see here, also across the northern, just east of Hudson Bay, we start to see a really strong ridge building up towards Greenland. And we're going to talk about that later in this video, so please stay tuned for that, because what's happening up here in Greenland is going to impact our weather here in the lower 48. But by the weekend, we see another trough digging down south here. I mentioned that area of Greenland. We're going to see a trough that's going to retrograde, but across the central plains, the Ohio Valley, another ridge is building, going to bring above normal temperatures to that area, as again, yet another trough continues to dig across the western United States. This has been the pattern that we've seen for most of the second half of October into the first 10 days of November, but we do have signs that this pattern is going to break down, and this stormy weather that we've seen across the western United States has the potential to move a little further east. That we're going to look at our weather. After our Monday, the weather really calms down across most of the United States. There are no real systems that we're going to talk about. Raphael is going to continue to dissipate down there in the Gulf. We're going to have mountain snows as those weak disturbances move onshore and cross the Rockies. They're going to kind of fall apart until we get to about Wednesday or Thursday, and that's where we see areas across the Ohio Valley that could have some storms. So we're going to watch for that exact location and timing. But as we move into next weekend, it's quiet weather across most of the United States. There's some storminess off the Carolina coast for next weekend. Again, we will watch and monitor that for you. But again, good week to get out and get those last minute outside chores done or anything that you need to get done as we prepare for this upcoming week. For our Monday, pretty seasonal, maybe a few degrees above seasonal for most of the United States. 40s across Minnesota. We have 60s in Missouri and then 80s down in Texas. Even across the Intermountain West, where we saw the heavy snow, temperatures are rebounding into the 40s and 50s. And across the Northeast, we're going to see 40s and 50s. Onto our Tuesday, we're going to have that trough is going to dig a little bit further south and east, so we're going to have a little bit of cooler air across the Northeast with temperatures in the 30s and 40s across Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, 30s and 40s across the mountains, and the 80s and 70s across Texas. For our Wednesday, where there's area of rainfall, we kind of see the spin in the temperatures. We see cooler temperatures across Minnesota into Iowa into northwestern Illinois. Again, where the rain is falling, temperatures are going to be held a little bit cooler. Ahead of that front, we're going to see warmer temperatures. And that's going to carry into our Thursday as that front continues to move further east. Indianapolis, you could be in the mid-50s by your Thursday, but we see right behind it ridging and warmth across the Central Plains. Again, temperatures in the 50s and 60s across the Dakotas and Nebraska will be likely for our Thursday. In terms of snowfall, other than those few systems that we're going to see that are going to impact the United States, most of the snowfall for the upcoming week is going to be focused around the mountains of the west and the mountains in the Northeast in upstate New York, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Most of that storm track is going to stay north of the Canadian border. So areas in Ontario and Manitoba, you're going to see some heavy snowfall. That's going to work its way over into Quebec and Newfoundland as well later in the week. And in terms of rain, this is through our rain on Monday, when we expect Monday to really be the most active day. We're going to see heavy rain across the Pacific Northwest. Rain that's moved out on Sunday night into our Monday is going to move offshore, generally ½ inch at most for the eastern third of the United States. So now I want to take you into this map here. And this is a map that is detailing where the areas of low and high pressure are, where the precipitation is going to be. And let's look at this timestamp. This is Friday the 15th around midnight. So what we see is, as we mentioned, across the United States, it's pretty calm. We do have that area of low pressure that's moved off the Carolina coast. Raphael has completely dissipated down in the Gulf. We have another low pressure or trough moving on to the west coast of the United States. Another one here up near Alaska that's going to, again, continue in that cycle. We have that low that's here in the Canadian Maritimes that we're going to watch. We've talked about it. The thing I do want to talk about now is here in Greenland. We have a high pressure that's at 1051 millibars, which is extremely high. And when this pattern starts to develop, when we start to see extremely high pressures or ridging across the subcontinent of Greenland, we develop what we call a Greenland Blocking High. And what Greenland Blocking Highs tend to do is that they disrupt the normal flow of the jet stream. So the jet stream generally moves from west to east. It rises and it falls as it moves across the globe. But with a Greenland Blocking High in place, it disrupts that. And so what it causes it to do is that jet stream then has to take a deep dive across the eastern half of the United States, and it sends colder air, and when it marries up with the subtropical jet, it can then bring storms and precipitation to that eastern half of the United States. So we have to watch the cold air coming in, and then where the subtropical jet is aligned in the United States to determine where the storm track is going to be. So that's one thing that the Greenland High can do. The other thing it can do is it does, again, it shifts the storm track. We see storms come onto the coast on the west coast. They generally move across the continent from west to east. But when we have this blocking pattern in high, that whole process gets disrupted. So when the storms move from west to east, we say they are moving in a zonal flow. Whenever we have the blocking high in Greenland, we have now what's called a meridional flow. So they follow those lines of longitude that we see across a map. And that they tend to, again, dive from the north to the south as opposed to going from west to east. So that's something that we're going to keep in mind as we jump here in this next map, we're going to put the map into motion. I want you to pay attention to this high. What is the millibar reading that we project, or this particular model is forecasting, and how do the storm patterns tend to move across North America? So let's put this into motion now, and we're going to see again, this high gets as high as a 1070. And so what that's going to do is, again, it's going to allow colder air to dip across the eastern half of the United States as that Greenland high continues to build, up to a 1080 potentially by this upcoming weekend. Then we start to see that high recede a little bit. It gets a little bit weaker. It's still strong at 1059 by the middle of next week, and we see storminess again wrapping up. Now, I don't want you to get too caught up on the exact locations of where it's showing snowfall, where it's showing severe weather, or even where this high is or its millibar reading. This is still 5, 10, 12 days out. A lot can change. But the thing that I want you to take away from this video is to watch this high. If it continues to build where we think it will, where does that storm track then set up? Is it across more of the central plains? Is it across the eastern half of the United States? Does it set up in a way that the storm track takes things off the coast of the Carolinas and spins up nor'easters as we get into the later parts of November? So those are the general ideas that I want you to see. What also happens is as the storm track dives across the central plains, what it does is it brings warmer than normal temperatures across the western half of the United States, because we have an area of ridging, the diving of the trough, and then the ridging up to Greenland. So that's the general idea of how a Greenland blocking high will work. So again, stay tuned as we will continue to watch this model over the next several days and let you know if we see any tweaks as this moves. Is it over more northern Canada? Does it not impact Greenland at all, or does it not develop as we think it might? And another reason we think that if this happens and the next two things happen, we think that that will play, again, a significant change in the pattern of our weather across the United States. So this is one particular model. This is the forecast as of Wednesday morning, the 20th of November at 7 a.m. And this is the European model. And so if you remember in last week's video, and if you don't remember it, click on this link and you can go back to talk about it. We were talking about the snowpack across the northern parts of Canada and the Canadian prairies. So this particular model wants to start building snowpack into Alberta, into Saskatchewan, into Manitoba. And it really fills it in pretty good. Now down here around Colorado, this is where we have the snowpack from this past weekend storm. We see that the Rockies and the Cascades, they're getting snow pretty regularly now, every 2 or 3 days. So that snowpack is building on those highest peaks and elevations. But if we can get this snowpack to develop, where we've seen that colder air contained to the western half of the United States, that's where the snow has been primarily been. But if we talk about that Greenland blocking high developing around the 19th or the 20th of November, what that's going to do is, as we build this snowpack, that storm track is going to come and could bring the colder air right over that snowpack and not modify it as much. Because right now, if you look at Alaska, you're seeing temperatures 20 and 30 degrees below zero. Obviously, as that air travels down across the United States, it's not going to be as cold as it was up in those Arctic regions. The level of snowpack is going to help determine how much that air modifies as it moves across the Canadian prairies, across the plains, because right now this particular model is showing no snowpack around the Dakotas, the Minnesota, and Iowa. So places like the Ohio Valley that really depend on the upstream snowpack to determine their temperatures, that air would moderate. And so it may bring cooler than normal temperatures, maybe 5, 10 degrees cooler than normal, but nowhere near if we had a good snowpack across the northern plains. And I just want to show you another model. This is the GFS. Again, it has a little more pockets of empty snow or snow holes, if you will, across especially Alberta. And it's not as aggressive with the snowfall across the Rockies and the Cascades in the west. So if this solution does develop, then we might not see that colder stormy pattern develop. It may not also cause the Greenland blocking high to take hold as we think it might during the second half of November. So a lot of variables are still in play here as we look at our weather models and our weather maps. And most of these are updated every 6 hours. Some of them are on a 12-hour cycle. So we're constantly getting new data 4 times a day to help make the forecast that we give to you more impactful, more relevant to your day-to-day lives. We hope you've enjoyed this time here at the Weather Farm. Again, check back with us later this week for more information as we continue to watch, will that Greenland high develop? But in the meantime, go right down here and click and subscribe. Click that bell icon to be notified when we have new content here at the Weather Farm. We hope you have a wonderful week, and thank you to all the veterans who have served this country of the United States. Have a great day.